When I think of racing games that are aimed towards a younger generation, I've noticed a trend where they've become increasingly more automated, and by that I mean that you've got auto accelerate, auto brake and auto steer, and you can turn all three of them on and just watch the gameplay itself. Indeed, some of the more licensed racing games that are aimed towards children have really gone down that path, and that's really helpful to get young generation gamers into, oh, look at a racing game, pretty lights, it's driving itself great. And you can turn those assists off as you go. But there's this kind of transitional period between getting all of that and then getting into, like, not more hardcore racing games, but something that's just more fully fledged. And that's exactly where I feel Pixel Car Racing Blocky Crash has a nice kind of transitional part in the market. This game has auto accelerate, so you just have to worry about the steering, but it's also viewed from an isometric perspective, so you'll be driving up and down the screen and your controls will obviously flip depending on where you're going. So if you're going down the screen, right is left, left is right, if that makes sense, because it's viewed from the perspective of the car. That will take some getting used to, perhaps for some younger gamers, but I also appreciate this from an older gamer perspective because that's what I grew up with in the 80s and 90s. The whole USP of this game is that everything is built in voxels, at least stuff that you can interact with on the track at least. So your vehicle, depending on which one you've unlocked, will have various different stats for speed, acceleration, handling and armour, but it will be built with various voxels. And as you go over jumps, or you hit the walls, or you bounce off of enemies, or enemies hit you with their attacks, you will see voxels and parts of your vehicle kind of fall off. And as you go over various health pads, it will pull from whatever voxel is around to place it back into your car. And what's really cool about this is that you'll start off perhaps with a car or a motorcycle that's of one certain colour, but depending on what you heal and where it pulls from, your colour of your car will start becoming parts of the environment. And it's such a cool little detail that really brings a lot of pizzazz and character to this game that I wasn't really expecting. I also didn't expect that the game would handle quite so well as it does too. Your vehicles are all pretty much planted, and because you're only dealing with left and right, and this is a keyboard only game, the controller does not work, so like calling that one out front. When you do hit left and right, it does feel like cute little go-karts in a way, or RC cars, because they turn on a dime, and so long as you invest in some upgrades to your vehicles in the handling, they can make their way around really cool hairpins quite easily. If you choose not to though, and you upgrade your cars so that acceleration and top speed are overpowered compared to your handling, you will end up just like doing a wall ring of death around the outside of those hairpins, scraping the walls, losing your voxels, and leaving your vehicle open to being destroyed by either hitting something else, or just when you go over a ramp and land, that hits and loses your pixels or voxels too. So it just leaves you exposed to potentially having your car shatter and then that respawn of a couple of seconds before you get going. This game has loads of different tracks, and what I really like about this is that the tracks are built in certain arenas, and then inside that arena there's loads of different configurations, and that means that Pixel Car Racing gets an awful lot of mileage out of the environments that it progresses through. And the way how the career menu is structured is that each environment has several different races and configurations inside it, and when you complete all of those and come at least third in all of those races, you then unlock the next arena to then go and play in. However, the arena that you've just completed then gets put into free play, and you kind of get given randomized journeys through that environment as part of a quick race event, and so it gives you an awful lot more replayability than you might first think, because there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of tracks in here. Like, it seems like there's over 100, but there's only like 12-15 different arenas, but inside there's loads of configurations, so just like it's more than the sum of its parts, and I wasn't expecting that. The other cool thing is that because you're going around different arenas and different environments are kind of blocked off depending on which route you're going through, not all of them are. And what that means is that when you're going particularly through career races, they'll leave purposely certain routes open for you to then take advantage of for a tactical shortcut. which can be quite gratifying when you get it right. That does then expose the biggest weakness for me of this game, and it's rubber banding. This game has some egregious rubber banding going on, and so if you're doing exceptionally well, cars will just come at you at twice the top speed of what you've ever had, and that feels really unfair, particularly if they then get lucky with a power-up and then decide to throw a missile at you that you can't avoid. Then you're thinking, that's not fair. But then the game starts to try and egregiously slow them down right before the finish line too, as if to give you a last-minute chance. And sometimes that can be quite helpful, because that also helps out with another problem that this game has, and that's the accelerator is always on. So sometimes you can be biffed into a wall and get stuck there, and it's really difficult to try and push yourself back round the right way again, because the game seems to have an aversion to letting you go backwards. And if it thinks you're trying to do it, then it's like, no. But you're also constantly accelerating, so you're constantly going back into the wall that you're trying to get yourself out of, which is a bit of a shame. The other thing with this game too is that it's single player only, and I would really have thought that this would have lent itself well to local multiplayer, and it just doesn't exist. So just be aware that this is a single player game going in. There's plenty to do, there's plenty to unlock, and there's plenty to then upgrade as you go. It is designed in a little bit of a grindy way, but because you're constantly unlocking things, like every 5 races a new arena kind of arrives, it doesn't feel too bad when you're going through career mode. It's post-career when you've unlocked all the tracks, and then you're like, I've still got loads of cars to go, and I need to grind for that currency if you want to be a completionist. And that exposes the next kind of odd choice. And this feels like this game was mobile first and is now trying to justify having multiple currencies and daily login rewards and things like that. It's like they've not fully removed the pay to win aspect, or pay to unlock aspect is probably the better way of calling it out, of this as a mobile game versus having to buy it on PC. So I think there's probably some minor work and tweaks to be done around that. And then the final comment that I have is that this is single player only, which feels like a slight missed opportunity given how arcadey and retro this feels in some ways, despite being one of those transitional titles between Kiddie Kart Racer and getting into something a bit more simcadey, because you do have to drive well and aim correctly, and you will have your car explode and respawn through your poor driving. So yeah, this is an odd one. I quite enjoyed it, but I can totally see how people would be put off of it from different perspectives. But the actual moment-to-moment racing experience was enjoyable, and from that point I would give it a recommend. Pixel Car Racer Blocky Crash is coming out later in 2024. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.